What happens when one of the quietest men in Hollywood sits across from one of the most outspoken hosts on television?
No one in the studio expected the interview to become so tense, so uncomfortable, so unforgettable.
The lights were bright, the audience was smiling, and everything looked like a normal daytime talk show.
But sometimes, the most intense moments begin in complete calm. Before we continue, make sure you subscribe to The Truth Narrator, like this video, and comment below because stories like this don't happen every day. Cillian Murphy walked onto the set with his usual calm presence. Quiet, composed, almost unreadable. He shook hands politely, smiled lightly, and sat down across from Joy Behar.
The audience applauded warmly. Everything seemed normal.
But Joy Behar was known for her direct questions, and she wasn't planning on this being a simple promotional interview. She smiled, but there was a sharpness in her eyes. "Cillian, you're known for playing very intense characters," she began, leaning slightly forward.
"Dark characters. Complicated characters. Some people say you disappear into roles so much that people don't really know who you are. So let me ask you directly, who is the real Cillian Murphy?" The audience made a soft oh-oh sound.
It was a simple question, but also a very personal one.
Cillian smiled politely, but his eyes showed caution.
He had done hundreds of interviews, and he knew when a conversation was about to become something else. "I think," he said calmly, "that the real person is always separate from the work.
Acting is what I do, not who I am." Joy didn't back off.
She tilted her head slightly.
"But that's a very careful answer," she said. "Almost like you're avoiding the question." A few people in the audience laughed nervously.
The tension had started, very quietly, very subtly, but it was there.
Cillian remained calm. "I'm not avoiding it," he said.
"I just believe that actors should be known for their work, not their private lives." Joy crossed her legs and leaned back slightly, studying him.
"That sounds nice," she said, "but that's not really how fame works, is it? People want to know what you think, what you believe, who you really are. That comes with being a star."
There was a small pause. The kind of pause that feels longer than it really is.
Cillian nodded slowly. "I understand that," he said. "But understanding something doesn't mean you have to agree with it." The audience reacted again, a few claps, a few surprised looks.
Joy raised her eyebrows slightly. She wasn't expecting him to push back, especially not so calmly.
"So you don't agree with fame?" she asked.
"I didn't say that," Cillian replied quietly.
"I just don't think fame should require you to give up who you are."
Now the room was very quiet. The friendly morning show atmosphere was slowly being replaced by something more serious.
Something more real. Joy leaned forward again.
"But isn't that part of the deal?" she asked. "You become rich, famous, successful, and in return, the public gets access to you, your opinions, your life, your thoughts.
That's the price of fame, isn't it?" Cillian looked at her for a moment before answering.
His expression didn't change much, but you could feel the shift in the air. "I think," he said slowly, "that people should be careful about calling it a price.
Because that makes it sound like something you owe. And I don't believe I owe the public my private self. I owe them my work. And I give everything to my work." The audience clapped louder this time. Some people nodded. Others looked at Joy, waiting for her response. The conversation was no longer light.
It was becoming a debate, calm, polite, but very real. Joy smiled again, but this time the smile was tighter.
"So you're saying actors don't owe the audience anything except performance?"
"I'm saying," Cillian replied, still calm, "that there should be a boundary.
And I take that boundary very seriously."
Joy tapped her fingers lightly on the table.
"Boundaries are interesting," she said. "Because sometimes boundaries look like secrecy. And sometimes secrecy makes people suspicious." You could feel the audience react to that line. A few people whispered. Someone in the back said, "Oh wow," very quietly. Cillian heard it. Everyone heard it.
He leaned back slightly in his chair, his eyes still on Joy. "Are you saying I'm secretive?" he asked calmly.
Joy shrugged slightly. I'm saying people don't know much about you. And when people don't know much about a celebrity, they start to wonder why. Another pause. This one was heavier. Cillian's voice, when he spoke again, was still calm, but now it was firmer. Or maybe, he said, they should wonder why they feel entitled to know. The audience reacted loudly now, some clapping, some gasping. The tension was no longer hidden. It was right there, in the open, sitting between them on that table. Joy looked at him carefully, realizing the interview had changed. This was no longer a friendly chat. This was now a conversation about fame, privacy, and boundaries, and neither of them was backing down. She leaned in and asked one more question, very directly. So let me ask you something, Cillian. Are you uncomfortable right now? The entire studio went completely silent. Cillian looked at her, expression unreadable, and answered quietly. I'm not uncomfortable, he said. I'm just very aware of what this conversation is becoming. And at that moment, everyone in the room realized this interview was no longer just an interview. It was about to become a moment. The moment Cillian Murphy said, I'm just very aware of what this conversation is becoming, something shifted in the studio. It was subtle, almost invisible, but everyone felt it. The audience stopped smiling. The usual daytime talk show energy, light, playful, predictable, had completely disappeared. In its place was something much more serious. Something real. Joy Behar didn't look away from him. She had been in television for decades. She knew tension when she saw it, and she knew when a conversation was turning into something that people would talk about later. She folded her hands on the table and leaned forward slightly. Well, Joy said, her voice calm but firm, what do you think this conversation is becoming? Cillian didn't answer immediately. He took a small breath, thinking carefully. He wasn't angry. He wasn't nervous. But he was choosing every word very, very carefully. I think, he said slowly, it's becoming less about work and more about trying to make me say something personal that I may not want to say on television. A few people in the audience shifted in their seats. Someone coughed. The silence in the studio felt heavy now, like the air before a storm. Joy nodded slightly. But that's what people want, she replied. They don't just want to see the characters you play. They want to understand the person behind them. That's not an attack, that's curiosity. Cillian gave a small, polite smile, but his eyes stayed serious. Curiosity is fine, he said. But there's a line between curiosity and pressure. And sometimes interviews cross that line. Now the audience reacted again, soft murmurs, a few claps, a few surprised faces. Joy noticed the reaction. She could feel the audience slowly starting to take sides, and that made the moment even more intense. So you feel pressured right now? Joy asked directly. Cillian tilted his head slightly. I think this interview is becoming very different from what I expected, he said. Joy didn't smile this time. Different isn't always bad, she said. No, Cillian agreed quietly. But it depends on the intention. That sentence hung in the air. The word intention landed heavily. The audience could feel it. Joy could feel it. This was no longer just a conversation, it was a quiet confrontation, hidden behind polite voices and careful words. Joy tapped her pen lightly on the table. Let me be very clear then, she said. My intention is to understand why you are so guarded. You're one of the most famous actors in the world right now, and yet people know almost nothing about you. That's unusual in today's world. Cillian nodded slowly. Maybe that's because I want it that way, he said. Joy raised an eyebrow. But when you choose a public career, do you really get to choose to be private? The audience made a soft "oh" sound. That question was sharp. Very sharp. Cillian looked at the table for a brief moment, then back at Joy. His voice, when he spoke, was calm but much firmer now. Yes, he said. I believe you do. Being an actor is my job. It's not an agreement to give strangers access to my mind, my family, or my private life. That's not in the contract. Some people in the audience started clapping. Others looked shocked that the conversation had become this direct. The tension was no longer subtle, it was now the center of the entire show. Joy leaned back in her chair and crossed her arms slightly. "But fans feel connected to you," she said. "They support your films, they make you successful, they follow your career. Don't you think they deserve to know you a little bit?" Cillian's expression didn't change much, but his voice dropped slightly, more serious now. "They deserve respect," he said. "They deserve hard work. They deserve good performances. But they don't own me." The audience reacted loudly to that, some clapped, some gasped, some looked at Joy to see what she would say next. The room felt divided now. Half the room seemed to agree with Cillian. The other half waited for Joy to respond. Joy leaned forward again, her voice a little sharper now. "No one said they own you," she said. "But this industry is built on publicity, interviews, media, attention. You benefit from that system, but you don't want to participate in it fully. Some people might call that selective." That word, selective, sounded almost like an accusation. Cillian nodded slowly. "Of course I'm selective," he said. "Everyone should be selective about what they share with the world. Especially now, when everything you say can be taken out of context, turned into headlines, turned into controversy." Joy responded quickly. "So you don't trust interviews?" "I didn't say that," Cillian replied calmly. "I just think some interviews are conversations, and some are traps." The audience reacted immediately, loud murmurs, a few loud claps, and a very noticeable tension spreading across the studio. Joy's eyes narrowed slightly. That sentence had landed exactly where everyone felt it. "A trap?" Joy repeated. "Are you saying this interview is a trap?" Cillian paused. This was the moment. Everyone could feel it. The cameras were close on his face now. The audience was completely silent. "I'm saying," Cillian replied slowly, "that sometimes questions are not asked to understand a person. They're asked to create a moment." No one moved. No one spoke. Even the audience looked stunned now. Joy stared at him for a few seconds, then asked very quietly, very directly, "And what do you think this is right now?" Cillian looked around the studio, at the audience, at the cameras, at the bright lights, and then back at Joy. "I think," he said quietly, "this is becoming a moment." And the way he said it made it clear this conversation was very close to crossing a line. The audience could feel it. Joy could feel it. And Cillian definitely felt it. Something was about to happen. The moment Cillian Murphy said, "This is becoming a moment," the atmosphere in the studio changed completely. It no longer felt like a daytime talk show. It felt like something else entirely, something heavier, something unpredictable. The audience was silent now, the kind of silence where people are not relaxed anymore, where they are waiting for something to happen. Joy Behar looked at him carefully, studying his face, his posture, the way he was sitting so still. She had interviewed politicians, actors, activists, and controversial figures for years. She knew when someone was closing off, and she knew when someone was about to draw a line. "Well," Joy said slowly, "television is made of moments. That's why people watch. People don't watch to see safe answers. They watch to see real reactions, real emotions, real truth." Cillian nodded slightly. "I understand that," he said. "But real truth is not something you can force out of someone with the right question. Real truth is something a person chooses to give." The audience reacted with a soft murmur. Joy didn't smile this time. She leaned forward, her tone now more serious than at any point before. "Let me ask you something very directly then," she said. "Why do you seem uncomfortable when the conversation becomes personal? You play deeply emotional characters, men full of fear, anger, love, pain, but when it comes to your own emotions, you build a wall. Why?" That question hung in the air like a weight. The audience didn't move. The cameras zoomed in closer. You could see the smallest details now, the way Cillian's fingers were lightly pressed together, the way his eyes stayed focused, the way he took a slow breath before answering. I don't think it's a wall, he said quietly. I think it's a door. And I decide when it opens and when it closes. A few people in the audience clapped quietly. Joy noticed, and she responded quickly. But do you understand why that frustrates interviewers? She asked. Because it feels controlled. It feels like you only participate on your terms. Cillian gave a small nod. Of course it's on my terms, he said. It's my life. The audience reacted louder this time, some clapping, some surprised laughter, some people looking back and forth between Joy and Cillian like they were watching a tennis match. Joy's voice became sharper now. But when you come on a show like this, it's not just your space. It's a shared space. And the audience expects honesty. Cillian looked at her for a long moment before answering. When he spoke, his voice was calm, but there was steel in it now. Honesty doesn't mean exposure, he said. And honesty doesn't mean I owe you access to everything. The audience made a loud "oh" sound. That line landed hard. Very hard. Joy didn't back down. No one is asking for everything, she said. But when you avoid questions, it makes it look like you're hiding something. That was the first moment the word hiding entered the conversation. And everyone felt it. Cillian's expression changed very slightly. Not anger. Not fear. Just a very small change, the kind that tells you a line has been crossed. I'm not hiding anything, he said quietly. I'm protecting something. The audience went completely silent again. Joy tilted her head. Protecting what? She asked. Cillian paused for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was lower, more serious than at any other point in the interview. Myself, he said. My family. My peace. My life outside of cameras. You see, people think fame is just attention and money and red carpets. But fame is also people thinking they have the right to every part of you. And if you don't protect that, you lose yourself. The audience started clapping, not loud, but long, steady clapping. Some people nodded. Some people looked emotional. The conversation had stopped being an argument now. It had become something deeper. But Joy wasn't finished. So what you're saying, she said, is that interviews like this are dangerous? Cillian looked at her directly. I'm saying they can be, he replied. Joy asked the next question very carefully, very slowly. And do you feel in danger right now? The entire studio went silent again. You could feel the tension in the air. The cameras were right in front of Cillian's face now, capturing every blink, every breath, every tiny movement. Cillian looked at Joy. Then he looked at the audience. Then he looked at the table. And then he did something that changed the entire moment. He reached up, very calmly, and unclipped his microphone. The audience gasped loudly. Some people actually put their hands over their mouths. The sound of the small microphone clip was strangely loud in the silent studio. Joy's eyes widened slightly. Cillian, she said, trying to keep her voice calm, what are you doing? Cillian placed the microphone gently on the table. He didn't rush. He didn't look angry. He just looked done. I think, he said quietly, we're finished here. The audience started whispering loudly now. The tension broke into confusion, shock, disbelief. Some people were standing slightly to see better. The cameras quickly moved to capture everything. Joy tried one more time. Are you seriously walking out? She asked. Cillian looked at her, not angry, not smiling, just calm. I came here to talk about my work, he said. Not to defend my personality. He stood up. The chair made a soft sound as it moved back. In the silent studio, that small sound felt incredibly loud. The audience didn't know whether to clap or stay quiet. Some people clapped nervously. Others just stared. Joy said one last thing as he turned to leave. This is live television, Cillian. He stopped for a moment, turned back slightly, and said a sentence that would later spread all over the internet. I know, he said. That's why I'm leaving.
and then he walked off the stage. The audience erupted, some clapping, some gasping, some talking loudly. The studio was in chaos.
The cameras kept rolling.
Producers were moving quickly behind the scenes. And Joy Behar sat there at the table, looking toward the stage where Cillian Murphy had been sitting just minutes ago. The empty chair said more than any interview ever could.
The moment Cillian Murphy walked off the stage, the studio exploded into noise.
Not loud chaos, not shouting, but that intense, confused noise that happens when people don't know how to react to what they just witnessed. Some people were clapping, some were talking loudly to each other, some were just staring at the empty chair like they had just seen something they weren't supposed to see. Joy Behar sat at the table, still looking toward the stage where Cillian had disappeared. For the first time since the interview began, she didn't speak immediately. Even she seemed surprised by how far the conversation had gone. The producers were moving quickly behind the cameras. You could see staff members whispering to each other, gesturing, trying to decide whether to cut to commercial or continue the show. The cameraman kept filming because in television, moments like this are rare, and rare moments mean ratings, clips, headlines, and millions of views online. Joy finally looked back at the camera and gave a small, professional smile, but the tension was still visible on her face. "Well," she said, trying to keep her tone light, "that was unexpected."
The audience laughed nervously, but the laughter didn't last long.
Everyone knew they had just witnessed something very unusual. Actors don't usually walk off shows like this, especially not actors known for being quiet, polite, and private. That's what made the moment so powerful.
It wasn't loud. It wasn't angry. It was calm. And somehow, that made it even more dramatic. Within minutes, clips of the interview were already spreading online. Someone in the audience had recorded the moment Cillian unclipped his microphone. Another clip showed the exact moment he said, "I'm protecting something."
Another showed Joy asking, "Are you seriously walking out?" and Cillian replying, "That's why I'm leaving."
Social media exploded.
On Twitter, people were arguing, Joy pushed too far. No, she was just doing her job.
Cillian was rude.
No, he was protecting his privacy.
This is the most intense interview I've seen in years.
He handled that with so much class. He should have stayed.
He did the right thing by leaving.
Millions of people watched the clips within hours.
YouTube channels started uploading breakdown videos. Body language experts analyzed every movement.
Media websites wrote articles with headlines like,
"Cillian Murphy walks out of live interview, tense moment on daytime TV goes viral, did Joy Behar push too far?" The interview that everyone is talking about. Some people supported Joy, saying interviewers are supposed to ask difficult questions. Others supported Cillian, saying celebrities are human beings and deserve privacy and respect. The internet was completely divided, and that's exactly why the moment went viral. Because it wasn't simple. It wasn't black and white. It was complicated, emotional, and real.
Back in the studio, the show continued, but the energy had completely changed.
The audience was quieter now.
Joy continued the show professionally, but everyone knew that the real show had already happened. The real moment had already passed.
And it was the moment when a quiet actor decided that some lines shouldn't be crossed even on live television. But the real story wasn't just about a walkout. It was about something bigger. It was about fame.
It was about privacy.
It was about boundaries.
It was about how much of a person the public has the right to see.
And it was about what happens when a calm person finally decides to say, "Enough." Because the most powerful moment in that entire interview wasn't when Cillian stood up. It was when he said, "I'm not hiding anything. I'm protecting something." That sentence spread across the internet faster than anything else.
People turned it into quotes, posts, videos, captions. Because even for people who are not famous, that sentence meant something.
Everyone has something they want to protect. Their peace. Their family. Their private life. Their real self. And that's why this interview became more than just an interview. It became a story people talked about. It became a moment people remembered. It became a question people argued about. Did he do the right thing by walking out? Or should he have stayed and answered every question? Where is the line between a public figure and a private human being? And who decides where that line is? Now I want to hear from you. If you were in his place, what would you have done? Would you stay and keep answering? Or would you stand up and walk away? Comment your opinion below.
And if you want more dramatic, intense, and cinematic stories like this, make sure you subscribe to The Truth Narrator, like this video, and share it with someone who loves celebrity drama and real, uncomfortable moments. Because sometimes, the most powerful moments are the ones that were never supposed to happen.